Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Endless Spiral podcast. I am, as always, your host, Keith Russell. On this episode, I am joined by Christine Higgins, who is the owner of Spiritual Wellness and Coaching. She's a yoga teacher, a reiki healer, and a well-being coach. Her passion is in helping people calm the monkey mind and connect with their inner compass. I love that. We will be chatting to Christine, obviously, about the different strings in her bow, but we're also going to be chatting to Christine about her own personal journey, because obviously this is what this podcast is about as well. It's giving people a platform to talk about their stories. And I have to say, I think this one's an absolute belter. So I just want to thank Christine for coming on the show today and having a chat. So Christine, I've picked up your story now. Don't disappoint me. How are you?
No pressure.
No pressure.
No, good, thanks. Nice sunny day, actually, so I'm in really good form.
Yeah. Oh, it's not sunny where I am. It's all foggy and horrible where I am, but it's quite warm. So,
yeah.
But sure, look, we're Irish and we complain about everything. So,
I know.
we'll just go with it. So, right, obviously, as I said in the intro, you've got plenty of strings to your bow, and we will get to that eventually, obviously. But like I was saying, we had a chat last week about things, and I actually was fascinated listening to you talking about your own story. So off you go.
Okay. Where do I start? So
where do you start?
I'm on this earth 40 years, and I feel like I've lived like lifetimes. It's been a bit of a rocky road full of ups and downs. I'm going to start. So my dad, growing up, he was suffering from his own mental health. And we sort of, like, I'll describe my dad before I realized that there wasn't something right with him, if you know what I mean. So if you're thinking about it, I was born in the 1980s. There was no chat about mental health. Nobody talked about it. It was all brushed on the carpet. Mm-hmm. Anyone that acted a bit like not in the not normal sense was just odd or labeled stay away from, and sort of taken away, pushed away from society. So I'll describe my dad first. My dad was a wonderful man. He was very soft. I used to have him wrapped around my finger. He was gentle. He was a real big, tall, like stocky man. He had a red beard. He was starting to go bald. And he was always outdoors. I just remember loads of nature walks. We were every Sunday driving an hour and a half. It used to take us to Fritz Bay, where now it takes about 30 minutes, 40 minutes now. That road down from like Killiney down to Fritz Bay was a nightmare. I used to remember being absolutely scalded sitting in the back of the car. And he was really good inventor. So he used to invent things. He invented this scooper thing for a golf, where you could like use a sort of rake thing to pull out the golf balls out of a sand pit. But it was actually years later that it actually came out. So he was on something. Yeah, when he was in 1991, he was going around trying to sell this idea to companies.
No way.
But he never patented.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So he used to be always like, he was a very good businessman, and he always had a business acumen about him. And but he also loved to empty out the contents of the engine in our car every Saturday morning out onto the grass, and then try and put it back. And then he'd always be wondering, why did he have a screw left over or some nuts or bolts? And then he would wonder why the next day we were stuck down Brits Bay, like broken down. So he was sort of that way. But like, I remember cuddles on his knee, going to bed. He was very affectionate and he was loving, and it was great. And then something changed. I think it's a mixture of, life got in the way. His mother died in 1996, 1997. And it just started like falling away. So the image of my dad, then I remember looking at him going, I think I've lost him. And at the age I first started noticing things that weren't right was when I was about 11 or 12. At the time, there was little me. I was going down a spiritual route. I had crystals. I was burning incense. I was burning candles in my room, which my mother's delight. She used to freak out with me. I've always read books. I had tarot cards. I was like so into my intuition. That was me, And then it just then started seeing that my dad was sort of, so what he would do was he'd start flippantly say something. He'd get angry, he'd lash out. He would drink a lot. I remember he came home drunk one night. I remember I looked out the window and he was puking in the front garden. He'd been brought home by the guards, and he was just like, you could see he was sort of falling apart. And then I started then just not feeling loved in the home. My mom, being my mom, she was the most wonderful mother. However, when you're a wife and you're in the 90s and you're seeing your husband disintegrate in front of your eyes, there's no help, there's no support. She could do only what she could do at that time. And seeing as she had a full-time job, she needed to keep that. And she was thinking, I'll study for a degree and try and get a better job so then we can see where we are with the family. So she was trying to provide for us. However, in that approach, she wasn't there for us emotionally. Right. And that's sort of an area that is like sort of struggled with over the years. However, as you can see, I've learned that, she did the best she could under the circumstances. So then, so I remember one time she was up on the roof, fixing the roof, and my sister was walking out the front door, and suddenly he fell off the roof onto the ground. And I remember running out and I was like, oh my God, he's really shaking. Like, so everyone's like, oh my God, you're all right. So he was just so shocked and so rattled, like obviously from a fall. Now we were living in a bungalow, so it wasn't 2 stories, 1 story. Not that would make it any easier, but like it's still like a high fall. But when he went into the hospital, I went in to see him, and he just said, a black demon pushed me off the roof. And I was like, what? And everyone was just like, what are you talking about? A black demon pushed me off the roof. And as a family, we were like, what's going on? Like, do you know what I mean? And there was no support there. Like, there's no one you can turn to. And especially when you're like in your early teenage years and you're seeing your dad sort of not being the dad that in your mind and that you had. So like as a little girl, you would look to your father as your protector, the person that you'd like listen to. You'd ask for advice, that man that would always be standing in your corner, but then to suddenly then he's not there really did affect me in a way where I felt like the rug was taken from underneath me. And so as the home environment then started getting really nasty, my dad started getting angry. My mum then wasn't in the home as much. And so basically it was just me and my 2 siblings and my dad. He would flippantly say things to you, very negative things to you. And then slowly but surely then I was a bit of, my personality is very direct. And if I see something's not working, I'll say that's not working. So can you imagine a little early teenage girl going, what's the story here, mom, dad? Nothing's working here. What's going on? Yeah. And of course, that would get his back up. That would probably show him up for where he's actually not like living up to be a good father. So we didn't like that. So then he started then hit me. In a way, I was in my mind, I was like, I probably deserve it at the time, but obviously no kid deserves to be hit. And then I remember it just started then this feeling of, I need to get him back. Like, how can I manage this in my early teenage years? Like, how do I deal with this? So I remember I used to love Rodell.
Me
and
too.
I used to, like every book, I love it. And I still every once in a while just read them again, and going, oh, it's like,
what was your favorite one?
Matilda. Had to be Matilda.
Right.
Yeah. And do you remember where like her dad like used to really piss her off basically and really upset her, and she used to go away and think, how can I get my dad back? What can I really get and really piss my dad off to get him back? Yeah. So she put glue around the rim of his hat. He loved his hat. Yeah. Do you remember? Yeah. So I remember as a little girl, I was like, well, I know my dad loves money. He loves making money. So not proud of the fact, but I was only a teenager girl trying to survive. I said, okay, I'm going to steal some of his money. So every time he hits me, I'm going to take money out of his pocket. And of course, then that started a vicious cycle. So he then couldn't trust me to like who was in the house, who's robbed me money. And of course, then would lash out at me. And then I would say, right, I'm taking a fiver off him, and it was just a vicious cycle. At the time then, I started hanging around down in Ballybrack, and because in Cherrywood, just where I lived, it just wasn't that connection that I was looking for. So I started hanging around Ballybrack. And if you think about it, like these friends, they're down Ballybrack, they're all living together, they know each other, they're on the same street. And then me coming in, a little outsider. So I was always an outsider. And but like the lads used to always give me stick. But in my mind, like, so you'd go, what's she doing coming in here? Like, you know what I mean? What's down here for her? Like, but in my mind, I used to sit there and take the slaggins, take the stick, because it was better sitting there on that wall, getting the absolute like piss taken out of me, than going home and sitting at home in that environment. And I remember, I'm quite a visual person. So, and this is, I think, where my resilience comes in to play. Whenever I am in a situation where like people were like, you know, like verbally abusing me, like, I would just picture a duck, and I'd picture waters off a duck's back, and I'd picture the duck like wriggling the water off the back. So I would pretend and visualize I'm the duck, and I'm just shaking off the words. And so that sort of started inside me a very strong resilience technique, like a tool for me to deal with anyone that was throwing me any insults or verbal abuse.
Yeah.
Then eventually, though, like the lads were just like, do you know what, Chris is one of those, so she might as well just join in. Like, so then this world opened up where I was just always down in Ballybrack. I was welcomed by all their families. I had the best years of my life down in Ballybrack, with making so many friends, and it was just like they saved me. They didn't realize that they really did. However, in the home, it was getting more toxic. So the more toxic it was getting, the less I was staying there. And then I was 18 at the time. Oh no, I was 16 at the time, and we went on a family holiday up in Carlingford. And it was all right holiday, and I brought one of my friends with me. And I remember, like, this is like, you know, my dad was there, he was drinking. And I just turned around to him and I said, Dad, you don't really like me very much, do you? And he turned around and he goes, no, Christine, I hate the ground you walk on. I wish you were never born. And I remember just going numb. But I think the resilience I built up from listening to the verbal abuse and, you know, I just sort of went numb, and I just went, okay, well, at least we know where we stand now. And he was like,
what age were you?
I was about 16.
16. Right, okay.
Yeah. So when I think about it now as a parent of 4 kids, and when I say it out loud, there's a little lump of me that goes, like, hello, Christine, like, how the hell did you sit there and go, okay, yeah, that's grand, he needs to know where we stand. Do you know what I mean? But when you're in this survival mode, you take everything, you know, and you take it on, like, and I think with the resilience I built up, I was well able to take it on. Do you know what I mean? However, I thought I could.
Yeah.
You know, this is at 16 in survival mode. The trauma and everything came up late 30s, you know, that sort of way. So no matter how far you think you're going to be a tough cookie, it will come back if you haven't dealt with your past.
So you are, so you were kind of just bottling things up, and basically you're just like a volcano about to erupt.
Yeah, but you see, it's funny, I'd never really erupt. I would keep it just down. You know, I keep
simmering
it really, away. Yeah, simmering away. But then it did explode. It did explode in style. So I remember going into the bathroom then, and a friend, Tanya, was with me, like, and I said, Tanya, my dad just after saying this to me, and she was like shocked, going, what? Like, how are you feeling? And I said, I'm actually grand, like, it's fine, you know. And she was like, I know she was sort of looking at me going, not really fine, but like, I was like, no, it's fine. It's grand, I can do it. So that was it. I stayed out of the house for 2 years. I was on the hop for 2 years. Just didn't really care. And then, like, my nana died in the middle of that as well, and I was really close to my nana, and that was my dad's mum. And I think then it just really opened up how mentally unstable my dad was. And then at 18, he hit me for the last time, and I remember thinking, said, right, I'm 18, I can't take this anymore. So my mom at the time, one day, he hit me, and I went into the bedroom. She was studying, and like, she heard, you know what I mean? But I think she was just hiding behind her book. She just didn't know how to deal with it. Yeah. And I don't blame her. She's just trying to do her own thing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And she, you know, some people can cope, some people can't. You know, and so I went into her and I just said, "Mom, I think I can't stay here anymore." And my sister had already gone as well. Like, she'd gone when she was 18. She'd gone like a hot snot out of the house. So I said, Mom, look, it's either me or him. And at the time, they'd actually split up. They'd split up for a number of years. They were living in separate bedrooms, thinking we'll stay together for the kids. But sure, it was more toxic than anything else. So she just, remember, she was shaking, and she held my hand and she said, I pick you, like, I want to know too. And I said, okay, well, hold my hand and come with me. And I knocked on his bedroom door, and he opened the door, and I said, right, Dad, we want you out. And he said, yeah, you'll be begging me back, and we were like, no, we won't. I think it's time for you to go. And when he really looked at me, Mom, he goes, are you serious? Is this what you want? And my mum goes, yeah, I do, Brendan. And he just said, fine. And he sort of sniggered and packed up his bags and went. But when he left the house, it was like a cloud just lifted, like, do you know what I mean? And me, my brother, and my mum were sitting in the sitting room, my younger brother, for the first time in ever. And we sat and we talked and we talked and we talked. We'd never done that before in our lives.
What age was your brother?
So, brother's 5 years younger than me, so he would have been about 13. So, like, that just goes to show how disconnected we were as a family growing up. And it wasn't anyone's fault, really. It was just that support wasn't there. And, you can't, it's just the way the cards were dealt, and yeah, I do mourn, like, maybe I should have had an idyllic childhood, but nobody does. We all have our, like, crosses to bear, at the time then, if my dad, like, he has like loads of siblings, like, I don't know, like 60 cousins from my dad's side. Like, it's a big family. And before my nana died, like, every Sunday we were in our house, every Halloween we were having fireworks displays out back garden, every Christmas there was sing-songs. It was just idyllic. It was just amazing. But the minute my nana died as well, that all stopped. And so I didn't just lose my dad, I lost a whole half of my other family. And that was actually more upsetting than anything else, because of all those years that you can't get back, all those celebrations, all those birthdays that you should have been at with your cousins, all the Christmases, all the Halloween parties. I wasn't invited, do you know what I mean? And that was really, it was like I felt like I was a black sheep in the family, like me, my mom, my brother, and my sister, we literally just cut off.
Yeah.
And that's not their fault either, they just did what they could, that they were doing at the time either. Like, there is no support out there. And that's what really, like, at the time, just when you look back, it's like, Jesus, it could have been so different if the support was there, So then, yeah, Dad moved out. We didn't see him for years. And then I think I was like 23. And it was when I was growing up, though, like, so I trying to describe how that affected me as well. So Dad disappeared, and that was fine. So I was like working and going out every weekend, and I realized that, like, I would still be in environments that I found comfort in uncomfortable environments, if you get me, because that was my safe space. It doesn't make sense, but I would be in an environment because that's what I was used to, and I didn't know anything better, So I would, like, put up with people that weren't really nice to me, but because that's all I knew. And it's a thing where you go back to where you're comfortable in. It's when people are suffering from trauma, they seem to migrate back to where they were because they feel comfortable in there. It's a safety net.
Yeah.
And I find that over the years, and it's only in the last while I've sort of stopped being in them type of environments. It's only in the last, actually the pandemic sort of helped me in that sense. It was great to just sort of say, right, who has my back? What friend celebrates me? What friend just tolerates me? You know what I mean? And really, I think along with a lot of people, they reevaluated their lives in the pandemic.
Yeah.
So it really opened my eyes. So then I'm 22, 23. After having a daughter when I was 19, and just chugging along. And I remember, like, anyone that asked me about my dad, I used to just say, I don't have a dad. I'd never speak about him. I just couldn't. I couldn't go there. I didn't know what to say. There's a lot of hurt because in your mind, like, when you're growing up as a little girl, like, and your dad's just not that person that he was at the start, it's very hard to sort of say, well, my dad doesn't live with us, or, whatever. And so I just used to say, I don't have a dad. And that was it. That just cut down that conversation, and people just knew not to go there. And then I got a phone call from St. John of God's, saying your dad's in St. John of God's. He wants you to come in and do he wants the family to come in and do an intervention thing. So the family we were expected to go in and talk to him with a counsellor and stuff. And I was like, I haven't spoken to him in 5 years. You know, I don't know, like, you know, who he is, what he's doing. You know, it was really hard for me to sort of say, I can't. And then you're also afraid to let him into your life again. Like, don't forget, I was physically abused, emotionally abused, mentally abused, you know, and then to be able to say, right, here's your dad, he's actually sick. Can you come in and help him? And you're like, what? Like, you know, there also is that fear of judgment. So when we were growing up, like, I wouldn't talk about my dad purely because of the trauma in me would be like what people would think and being judged. And that actually carried into like my late 30s of, I still do have these little bouts of triggers of being judged or, you know, just like, oh, what are people saying? What are people thinking? And it'd be an avalanche of the mind loop then. And you'd be gone for days, like thinking in your head, you know, that sort of way.
Yeah. And do you still think, when you say you kind of, you know, you worry what people are thinking, is it still about your father, or is it about different things now?
It's about different things now.
Okay. Right.
Like, I would say a lot of my self-limiting beliefs over the years has been by what other people will think of me. And because, like, I've had a bit of a colourful life, but I've seen, like, you know, if we look back and reflect on your life, I've pushed through it at every stage, but it's been an absolute journey. Like, I've gone to hell and back in my mind to be able to fight through that triggers, but I can pinpoint why I have that trigger and why I have that trauma is because pinpoint back to, oh my God, what will people think? Because my dad's mentally ill.
Right.
And yeah, so then, you know, growing up as well, then we got that phone call and I was like, no, I'm actually grand in my life. I can't have him in my life again, you know. And there's also then as well, like, you would develop a codependency need. So I would be very codependent on friends. So remember, like, when it was going on in the house, like going back to Ballybrack, I would be so codependent on the people there. Like, I remember it being a little, like, 14, 15-year-old and thinking, okay, my family aren't there for me, but my friends are. So my friends are going to be number one. So I spent, like, most of my life, like, being codependent on my friends and expecting that in return, which that was my trauma. Do you know what I mean? But, like, if my friend was too busy with their own lives and you're like, you know, the trigger would start and you'd be like, you know, and then it would start the loop again, the mind loop again. But I can pinpoint to why I have that. Yeah. And that's through the healing and working on myself to say, okay, no, that's a trauma from the past that's coming up again. Relax, Christine. It's okay. You know, it's not about you. You know, so that would be another sort of thing that has come out of this. So then, yeah, his family then, his sister looked after his care, which I'm very eternally grateful for because we just couldn't do it. Unfortunately, though, they didn't understand the extent of the trauma that we'd gone through. And so there was a lot of, let's say, not so nice vibes coming from them, because if you look at it, they're just thinking about their brother and we left him, but we didn't. We just couldn't fight through that and let him back into our lives because we'd had been through so much.
Did you ever tell anybody at the time?
No.
So nobody knew anything that went on apart from whoever was in the house?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
You don't, like, you think about it, there was no, like, counselors weren't at your fingertips. You know, there was nothing there when in the early 90s. Unless there was, but, like, it wasn't brought to our attention.
Yeah. But even friends or family, other family members, or, you know, anyone really?
Not really. No, because you were so my approach would be just to bury it deep down, deep down.
Yeah.
You know, it's been done. But then I didn't take it in a sense where I was a victim. Like, I did, I'm not going to lie, my 19 to 21-year-old, I was like this psychopath. Like, I was partying to access, I was lashing out, I was, you know, just trying to come to terms with it. But then I sort of just worked through that. And then it was, do you know what saved me was my daughter having her at 19. Like, she literally was like, right, Christine, you're a mother now, you have to cop on, I think she was given to me as a gift, because I think I would have went down a very slippery slope if I hadn't had her at the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that sort of made me sort of keep on the straight and narrow, and sort of say, right, well, this isn't all about me anymore. There's a little girl at stake. So then, so we didn't hear him then for years. And then my sister came back. She moved out of the house, and she was about to go to Seattle, and she started trying to reach out to my dad. We arranged to meet him in a pub. And of course, that to be one of the local pubs near where I lived. And I was like, oh, of course, you know what I mean? What happens if my fear of people that know me will see me in this pub? And I'd be like, shit. So anyway, we went and we met him. And when I saw him then, after like not seeing him for years, he just looked like a very sick man. He would just stare up in space. He'd say, hi, Dad. And he'd be like, oh, hi. But then just stare up in space. And so there was just utter silence. And me, my sister and brother would be like, what do we do? And then you would talk among ourselves. And then it was like, okay, see you later. Bye, Dad. And then that was it. So it was so awkward. And but then as siblings, though, I think you still feel obliged to do, or as daughters and brothers go, you still feel obliged that it's very hard to let go and drop them completely. Do you know, that sort of way? So we could do the best that we could, but it was tough. And then every year after Nana died, they'd have like an anniversary, and I always made it my business to go. Number one, because it was the family that I still mourned. So I loved seeing them, and it was great. The cousins were amazing, and I'd love seeing them. And but then you would feel that tinge of like sadness when they had a cousins night and you weren't invited, or it was just like you still are not part of the family. My dad was there, but then he was still just staring off into space, and it was even more awkward. And I remember my brother, like, he didn't go for years, and my sister, and they were like, why are you making yourself go every year? And I said, because I still love that family, and dad's still my dad. Do you know what I mean? I still want to be there. It kills me. I used to spend like days on end, like on a mind loop after. But I still have this loyalty that, like, if we weren't given the hands that we were dealt with, we'd still be in a loving family, and we would still be doing it every month, every year, going for the anniversary mass. So I always made it my business to go, even though it emotionally, it pulled me through the ringer. Like, I wouldn't sleep for days on end after it, and I'd be analysing. I'd be like, it was literally just bringing the trauma back up again inside.
Yeah.
I think I'm just looking for punishment. Just like, okay, let's go again. Yeah, 1 year again. So then slowly then I think maybe the older I got, the more life experience I got, I sort of started reading more into mental health, and you'd hear about it more than, in mainstream media, and then you'd hear it a little bit more around your own environment. And then I started going, okay, I don't blame my dad. And to be able to say, I forgive him. Forgiving is like for something that, like, wasn't your doing. It's hard to sort of work through that process, but you sort of, like, to me, I just sort of felt, if I don't forgive, I'm just eating my own poison. If you don't heal and forgive, you're literally just it's going to keep coming back. The trauma, the feelings, the anxiety, it'll all just keep coming back every time. But like, if you forgive, like, to release that, you're not forgiving them and letting them off. You're forgiving for your own mental health.
So you kind of feel like you kind of get a bit of closure on it.
Yeah, but you're not forgiving them for what they did. That'll always hurt. But you're letting go of any of those feelings that you keep holding on to, that is bringing up all the time. And I think once you release that, then you step into a different level altogether, and then I remember my auntie rang and said, look, your dad's been diagnosed with schizophrenia and depression. Like, this is years later, like, this is 30 years later. And, it's not his fault. And I was like, no, it's not his fault. It's just the way what happened, Then once you have a name to it, it's like, okay, you have a name to it, but then it still doesn't, it makes it real. Do you know what I mean? But it still doesn't take away from the pain and the upset and everything that's caused. And I think that's where like I fit in, where like I have mental health is my number one thing now. I take my experience as being a daughter for my dad and what he went through, I take that into my adult life and in my parenting approach as well. Like I have 4 kids now, and I would be very in tune with their mental health. So I'd be always checking in with them, probably too much that they're like, Mom, leave me alone. Because there also was another thing as well, like when you're growing up, you have that fear when your parent is suffering from mental health, and you have that fear that you're going to turn into them.
Yeah.
And that actually came up then when I was when I was 30. I started my own business, and 2010 I started my own makeup business and Face of X makeup supplies, and it was amazing. Like I loved my business. Like I had a studio, I had a shop, I flew in famous makeup artists in from the UK. They're working on Vikings, and they were like doing their workshops. I was doing workshops. I was working on films. Like it was absolutely the most amazing experience of my life. And then my dad died in 2013, and then it was boom. It was like a light switch. All the trauma, the hurts that I never actually worked through, that I just buried and buried and buried, came up and literally hit me in the face. And so I was already stressed with the family life, because we had like small kids. Then I had the business, and it was literally knocking stuff out of me. Like, I was one girl band, like, I was doing everything. And I was just getting too much. I was in a lot of I was just, I was in so many different toxic environments in terms of groups and people, that I was trying to please everyone. Like the one thing about me is I'm a real people pleaser, and I really can't say no to people. And it's one thing that I've had to learn. And that again goes to codependency and the fear of being judged and the fear of falling out with someone. Yeah. It all links into the same thing. And so in 2015, so like in my mind, actually, when my dad died, like we had to then go through the process of his family and us coming together and trying to stop our emotions and then give my dad a good send off. And that was traumatic in a sense. Like I didn't sleep for, I'd say, about a month. The stress of it was unreal. Because my auntie had mined and took care of him. There was then this like power struggle. And then, he's going here, he's being buried, he's being cremated, he's doing this. And you're like, oh. And I remember like walking into the funeral home, and I was his next kin as well, because my sister lives in Las Vegas. So it was all sort of on my shoulders. And that was tough. Like I remember walking into the funeral home, and he was laying out in the casket and just didn't like, he just didn't look like himself at all. Like, and I remember just like, saying, oh, Dad, look at us now. Like, do you know what I mean? Look at all them years that we've missed out. And you know what I mean? And if you could have talked, you probably would have agreed, went, yeah, what the fuck are we doing? Like, you know what I mean? But, I just was like, now you're at peace. The monkey mind's gone. Those voices in your head are gone. Those dark thoughts are gone. It was later on that I found out. Like my auntie said that when he was in St. John God's, he was begging the doctors to kill him. He was begging anyone to kill him. He said he couldn't live anymore. And to be in that frame of mind, it's just like you can't even imagine it. That's how sick he was. And there's a lot of people that can't handle them thoughts, and they think the only way out is the other way, and like he had all the support there in St. John of God's, just obviously that stopped him going on to another level. But he still had them thoughts, so when I saw him in the casket, I was just like, God, like, what are we going to do now? You know what I mean? And you see, I have a thing of defense mechanisms that I make a joke of things. So that's what I do. When I went to counseling, they were like, Jesus, you're a tough cookie. But it was, I just said goodbye to him. And I remember a wrinkle trying and go, Christine, you okay? Like over there. And I'm going, yeah, I'm just having words with Dad. Like, leave me alone. You know what I mean? It's like, just leave him. And so, we had to say goodbye to him. And but there was something there, like I'm quite spiritual, and I realized my intuition came back, and I started really believing in, like, I've always believed in the afterlife, I've always believed in spirit worlds and, you know, all that. And I really believe in that. And I sort of just felt that there was closure there, that, you know, he can be a good dad now. And it was funny because I went to a medium a couple of weeks later after he died, and she says, your dad's after coming through. And I was like, oh yeah. And he says that he's so sorry. He says he's actually standing here crying in this room, saying, I'm so sorry, I love you. I couldn't stop the monkey mind. It's exactly his words, couldn't stop the monkey mind. And he says, I was just so consumed with my mental health issues, I just couldn't be a father to you.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, right, okay, that's grand. And he says, look, I'm going to move mountains for you to be a dad to you from the spirit world. You'll want for nothing. And when the medium, like, was saying that, she was saying it through her, like, I just went, do you know what, I actually believe him. And so then that was my closure and my dad. Like, we forgave each other. Like, do you know what I mean? That to me was closure. It wasn't like, you know, I could have spent the rest of my life not feeling that closure and really suffering. But when I came out of that medium's room, I was like, I know in my heart and soul that message was from my dad. Like, he really meant that. And I'm not messing. From the minute I walked out that medium room, I have not wanted for nothing. I've gotten so much. Everything I've manifested in my life, I've gotten. Everything I've wanted, anything I've put my mind to, I've gotten. And yeah, some people say, yeah, it's because you put the hard work in. And yes, I did. But I still think there's a little, you know, there's a little nudge there. There's a little wink from my dad in the spirit world just watching me, you know. And, you know, if that's what I believe, that's what I believe. And it's making me happy, you know what I mean?
Exactly. I was getting goosebumps just listening to you describing that. It's amazing. Go on, carry on.
I know. And so then that was 2013. And then I still had the business though, and business was going great. And then I walked into, this is funny, weird. So I was pregnant, it was 2015, and I was really struggling. My anxiety, the triggers, like I was just any little trigger at home. I don't know, like your listeners are probably going to relate to this, where you're overwhelmed, you're stressed, there's shit flying at you daily, and you're running around with your head is chicken. And then someone spills a drink on the table. What happens? The fucking place gets upended, you're freaking out. And then you're walking away going, I just freaked out over someone spilling milk. What the hell is going on? But it wasn't about the milk. It's about another thing you couldn't control because you felt you were losing control of your life, of what you were doing. You know, you were just literally running adrenaline.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to.
Yeah. Like, and the same with my husband now, but he was partner at the time, and he was going through his own shit as well. And so there was two of us, very unhealed people, coming together with our both separate traumas. And then we had literally 4 kids in the mix. And then we had moved down to Wicklow, and we loved, like, Wicklow was lovely, but I realized I'm a city girl, home is home. And we just weren't settling. We gave it 8 years and we just couldn't settle, but we were so stressed. But there was never any, like, question of us splitting up, because there was always this deep rooted love, like, do you know what I mean? But it was very highly tense, very highly stressed, and it was all just about emotions. It was all about external influence coming into the home. And so like, I'd have a bad day of work, come in and be like, rah! You know, and he'd come in bad, and, you know, and it's just, and I think the majority of many households in Ireland were like that. Do you know what I mean? And maybe still are like that, you know?
Yeah.
But I always knew, like, oh no, the issue isn't between us two. It's the external factors that we're letting in. It's the emotions. We just can't deal with the triggers. And that's what was happening, you know? So then I got pregnant actually on the 4th, and I was up, I was doing a makeup tutorial thing in actually upstairs in the local pub in Kilcool, and they had actually in the next room had another medium I'd never gone to before, and a few girls I knew, love girls, were in that room. So I said, oh, when I finish the makeup tutorial, I'll come in and say hello. So I was walking in, and the medium was like talking away. And I was walking in, like, big belly out here, and she just went, you. And I was like, yeah. And she says, she sort of just put her hand up, and she's just, it's like as if something went over her face, and you could see that she was like, oh, and I was like, oh, shit, what's she going to say now? And she says, don't worry, your dad's got your back. You'll be all right. And I was like, Okay, thanks. And I sat back down going, oh shit, like I'm due a baby in like 3 weeks time. What the hell was that? You know what I mean? So I went home and like at the time my blood pressure was through the roof. Like I was like anxiety, like overwhelmed, freaked out, stressed to the hilt, like not a good cocktail to have when you're pregnant in your late pregnancy stage. And I remember going to the doctor and going like, I actually can't sleep. I couldn't sleep past 3 o'clock in the morning for like my whole pregnancy. I just couldn't. I was so stressed about the business. I also had an accountant that fucked me over. I had a big huge fat bill. Don't trust accountants. And I know they're not all bad. Just this one. But so I was so stressed, you know, and I loved my business. It was my baby. And I was like, what do I do? And I remember saying to John, John, I don't think there's something's gonna happen. I can feel it. And he was like, you'll be grand, stop it. And I said, no, I can feel it. I said, that was a little warning. I said, I can feel something's gonna happen. So I'd gone to the doctor as well, and they said, look, we're going to bring you into the mental health unit up at the top of Hollis Street, and just get you assessed, because like, you know, you are saying you're struggling a lot, like, you know. And the doctor now, every month I went to see her, she was like, Christine, will you just please stop? You have to stop. You're going to actually put yourself in early grave. It was that bad, like, you know. So anyway, I remember huffing and puffing up to all the steps up to the top. It's at the very top floor, the mental health unit. Now I don't know if it still is, but it was at the time. And I remember sitting down and talking to a counsellor, or I think they were just there to assess you. Do you know, I was so out of it. I can't even remember who I was talking to. Do you know, that sort of way? Yeah. And she just said, look, it sounds like you're overwhelmed. You don't actually have like a mental health issue, but it could develop into one if you don't look after yourself. And I was like, okay. And so then a week later, they brought me in early because my blood pressure had gone through the roof and there was like danger to the baby. And so I was induced early, and John was with me, and we were like in the unit tree, the famous unit tree, which is everybody hates. And I'd never been in it in the other tree, and I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about. This is flipping hell on earth. But anyway, so I got induced. Oh, stop! Got induced, and I kept saying, John, something's gonna happen. I said nothing, and he was like, would you relax? So anyway, I got induced, and it was a very fast labour, and Lillian was born, and it was great. It was magical. Everything was fine. Went back down, was brought into a ward. I was in a ward with three beds. I was like, happy days. I'm after scoring big time here. This is great fun. John was there for a couple of hours. Then you can see he was like tired. So I was like, go on, we're grand. I gave Lillian her last bottle. I said it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I was like, happy days. I'm going to get her down now. I'll sleep till about 7 or 8, hopefully. She was always a good baby. And put her down. And I won't go into gore details, but I'll give you an idea. I lay down and suddenly just felt really uneasy. I was like, what is going on here? And I said, I don't feel well. And I just felt this rush. I was like, oh, I think I need to change my clothes. So I sat up in the bed, and I realized my bag was over across the way at the window. So I was like, I'm going to get there. So then I just pressed the button because I really felt woozy, and I was like, what is going on? This is mad. And it was actually a doctor walked by at the same time, which very unheard of at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And she was like, what's wrong? I said, I need to change my clothes. I don't feel well. And you could see she was a bit impatient. Going, oh, here's another one, you know, demanding. And she's where's your bag? It's across the window. So she's like a bit huffing, putting the bag on the bed. She says, come on then. And when I stood up, there was just this big rush, and it was like something out of like a horror movie. And it was so traumatic. I actually fell over the other side of bed and got sick. You know what was going on. And then suddenly the doctor was like, oh shit. And then suddenly there were 6 doctors in the room, and they were all around me, and my body went into shock. So it started like vibrating. I had no control over my body. I remember just fixating on the heart monitor, the heart, and it was like, in other ways, 120 over 80 is normal. Mine went down to 19, and I just kept going down, and then I blacked out. And I was like, you know, oh. But I remember the last thoughts in my mind was going, oh, this is what your one meant. Shit. The last thought was, oh shit. You know, I was like, what would be your last thoughts? Oh shit. Yeah, okay. Well, that was mine. So then I woke up in ICU, And the nurse, I was like, where am I? She said, in the ICU. And I said, oh, look, this, what happened? She says, it was touch and go, like, you're very lucky to be here. And I was like, oh, thanks, Dad. And I was like, he got me back.
Yeah.
So then I remember going to the toilet, like I was in ICU for a while, and then I remember like getting wheelchaired over to the toilet, and the toilet is, I don't, in the Hollow Street where they have the stairs and there's like double doors at each level.
Yeah.
Apparently I was in one of them doors, behind one of them doors, and the double door opened, and there was two people walking upstairs, and they actually stopped mid-step and were looking at me horrified, and I was like, what the fuck's wrong with me? Like, I'm being wheeled across into the toilet. And when I looked in the mirror, I had literally no blood in my face, like no blood in my body at all. I lost over half of my body weight in blood. So I had to get loads of blood transfusions and all that. So that was fun. And I was ringing my husband, like, going, where the hell is he? And what was he? He was hungover in bed. I got the, how dare you be? I nearly died last night, and you're fecking hungover in the bed, like. He never ran in so fast. Like, he felt so bad.
I'd say so.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, he like, I actually got more kick out of him walking in, going, "Oh my God, you okay?" I just started laughing at him. You know what I mean? I was like, "I'm fucking typical," So I got out of hospital, and I was told to rest. But there was nobody minding me business, so I had to go back into the office with a baby in a Moses basket 4 days after the event, and sit on my desk and feed my baby and answer calls and wrap up orders. And I was like, Christine, this is taking the stuff now. You can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is my baby. But I have a thing about letting go. And that's another thing that I've had to work through over the years, is letting people go, letting things go, and letting businesses go, things that don't work for you anymore, because it's literally going to really affect you. So, and it's not good. The triggers kick off and the trauma starts again. So you have to let go in order to move forward and step into the new. So I put up on Facebook, I was closing down Face of X actually. And then phone call after another. I got 2 phone calls. The minute I put it up on Facebook, 2 of my competitors rang and asked me to buy it out. I wasn't even selling it. And I was like, okay. And I've never sold a business in my life before. So I sold it and worked through it all. But I cried at every stage saying goodbye to that business. Like, it was the most amazing experience in my life. And I'll always cherish it, even though it knocked the stuffing out of me. I loved it. Like, I met so many famous people. I was over in IMATs in England, like rubbing shoulders with all the famous special effects makeup artists. I worked in films. I met wonderful people. It was the most amazing experience of life, but yet the most traumatic experience of life, and it's funny because I'll always hold like memories of good memories. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Funny. Yeah. It's always, I always find like it's typical cycle. It's the good and the bad. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah. Well, I suppose you can kind of you can block out the negative memories, and then you can kind of just remember the positive ones. As long as it's not affecting you too much.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I remember though, I put up on, I saw on Facebook, I was still in all the makeup groups, and I'd sold it on to a competitor, and I saw all my old customers and they were like, is Christine left Face of X? And they were like, someone wrote, yeah, no, she sold it on. It's not the same without her. Like, I didn't get my delivery for another week, and it wouldn't happen under Christine's management. And I was like, oh. And then I just sort of went, that's my closure, because my reputation was still intact. You know what I mean? So that was my closure, going grand. Because again, there was the fear of judgment, to be able to step out into the big bad world then and say I had a business and I sold it on. Like, the amount of people that were like, what happened to your business? Did it fall? Like, did it just collapse? Or, and these are people that from the area, and you're going, give me a break. But it was still then the trauma, the triggers were coming up of being judged,
Yeah. So did you feel anxious about maybe what you were going to do next? Or did you have anything in mind that you wanted to do after that? Or did you just want to take a break and just have a rest for a while?
Well, I didn't, because see, I did all that in a career break because I work in UCD. So I took a 5-year career break and had 3 babies in them 5 years and then started a business. So you can imagine, probably not the best idea. So when I sold the business, I was very lucky in a sense where I went back to UCD. But if you can imagine going back to a finance department, sitting at a computer and not talking to people, because I am a people person, I love talking to people and buzzing off them and hearing their stories. But can you imagine like seeing going back into an office, looking at a computer and a spreadsheet, and that was it. And I actually sat there and the tears were rolling down my face because I was like, did them 5 years actually happen?
Yeah.
Like it was mad. So then, what did I do? Do you know what? I started yoga. The triggers, still the anxieties coming up. There was still a lot of like, I needed to move to get all that trauma out of me. And the way I found my solitude was through yoga. I had the baby. I needed to tone up a little bit. So I started yoga in Kilcool and I obviously fell in love with it. It's not about like what it does to your body. It's more about your mind. It's about connecting your mind, your body and your soul. And like, it was a space for me, me and my mat. And that's what you get. Like when anyone starts yoga, like they're a bit like, I can't put my head behind my feet or my feet behind my head, or, I'm not flexible. I'm not that. It's not like that at all. It's about your mind, it's about connecting your breath to the movement. And that was a thing, like, I lost my authentic self through all of that. Like, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I liked because I never checked in with myself. Like, I have spent my life looking outwards for validation, looking outward for being accepted, never actually bringing it inwards to me and saying, well, what does Christine want? And
so many people are like that, isn't it? I think we're all guilty of that in some way, isn't it? It's just
100%. Like, and like, you could get carried away in different in work or friends groups, and you actually could be the loneliest person in that group, because you're there in your heart going, nobody actually really knows me. I'm just like, we wear so many masks every day.
Yeah.
That when we really strip them off, like, who are we?
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
And that's what I was doing. I was wearing a lot of masks. I think I probably have a whole bloody house full of masks at this stage, to all the different stages in my life so far.
Yeah.
But you really know who the ones that your friends and the family that are always there, the ones that are real rock solid, are the ones that when you take all those masks off, that they're still there. They still accept you for you.
Yeah.
They don't judge you. They just let you shine. The ones I have actually found the hardest thing is, don't just hang around with people that tolerate you, hang around with people that celebrate you. And that was a big thing for me, because if you think about it, no one in my growing up, I was never in that situation where people celebrated me.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you have a good support circle now, or, whether it's friends or family or?
My mom, our relationship when my daughter was born, like, we just went from strength to strength, and we really connected. And I totally have no an old trauma or issues with my mom. Like, what I mean? I can see what it really is that there's no manual out there for anyone to deal with what life throws at you, and we're all literally just bumbling along trying to figure it out ourselves. Some people ask for help, some people don't know how to ask for help, so you can't particularly blame someone if they don't make the right choices, or they react in a certain way. Like, it's about the environment. Like, I don't think someone's behavior is a definition of that person. The behavior is the environment that they find themselves in.
Yeah, exactly. Did you try anything when you were feeling overwhelmed and so anxious when you were in your other business? And what I mean by that, like, did you try any mindfulness, or were you aware of anything at all, or were you just kind of just getting on with things because you probably just felt you were so busy, you didn't have time to, as you said, you eventually kind of looked inwards and found your kind of inner peace? But did you have time for that before then?
No, because I had like 4 kids at that stage. 3 and then the 4th at the end. No, because I don't know, no.
Yeah.
I didn't, because number one, it just wasn't in my field. Like nobody I knew did yoga, nobody I knew did mindfulness, nobody I knew meditated. If it's not in your environment, it's only when you really hit rock bottom that you will then start looking for other methods to help you. Well, most people do. Do you know what I mean? Some people can't. I'm not trying to put everyone in the same pot. But like, it's really, I think some people, in order for them to seek help, they have to hit rock bottom and then they then start saying, okay, something's up here. Because if you think about it, we've so much noise in our lives. Like there's so much going on. There's, you know, and that's the thing with the pandemic when it happened. Like I remember saying to people going, I can feel something's going to go down. The world is literally running at such a high frequency that everyone's running around like headless chickens. Nobody's respecting anyone. Everyone's out for themselves. It's all dog eat dog. And I was like, something's going to happen. And so when the pandemic hit, I was like, this is it now, you know. But like with the pandemic brought a hell of a lot more, like, you know, issues with it as well. Like where I look at it is like we have, in order for us to be in a balance on our lives, like we all have busy lives, but it's about putting the tools in place to be able to overcome all the obstacles and challenges that come our way. Nobody in this planet will have this idyllic lifestyle where there be no challenges thrown in their faces. Like that's
tell me about it.
Yeah, like that just goes without saying. However, if we are strong in ourselves and learn little tools to help us overcome these challenges and obstacles, or help us sort of understand that we bring our attention inwards. Like, you know, the external is all noise. It's all noise. And we can turn off that noise when we want to, when we bring our attention inwards. Because the only thing we can control is ourselves. We can't control what's happening external in our lives. However, we can mind what's inside of us. And I think we've been like really conditioned to be like external, social media, you know, work, job, blah, 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 you know, but we need to start stopping and going, okay, how do I feel emotionally, physically, and spiritually? Because those three elements, they connect into us feeling balanced. If one of them's out of whack, it's going to send the others out of whack.
Yeah.
To be like that, like when the pandemic hit, everyone emotionally started like going, oh shit, and they started panicking.
Yeah.
Then slowly there was a movement, well, for some people, a movement out through the emotional side of things going, actually, this is too bad. And, you know, there is a few positives here. And then it was physical. Okay, well, what can I do? I can go for my walk on my 5K, or I can go swimming, or I can do this. So turn it to physical. And then you actually realize then people started moving into the spiritual side of things, because they saw that the exercise and then the emotions were starting to link up, that then they look at the spiritual side of things. And the spiritual side of things is like, oh, I'll check out this meditation thing. I'll do this mindfulness. I'll start a yoga class online. I'll go look at Reiki healing. But it's very important that those three elements, they're like wheels, that they're always in motion. Because if one of them stops.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Like, what exactly would you class as spiritual wellness? I'm glad you said that, because I was going to ask you that anyway.
Well, spiritual wellness, like, so I am a yoga teacher and a Reiki healer, and I'm also a wellness coach.
Right.
So spiritual is about like saying, right, we're going to have some challenges in our lives. We're going to have obstacles thrown in our faces. It's about connecting with ourselves and bringing it inwards, bringing attention, saying what tools and what daily tasks, actions can you do to help you overcome these challenges and obstacles, because they're going to keep coming up. I'm not a therapist. Whenever someone has some deep-rooted trauma, I say go to a therapist. Mm-hmm. However, a therapist looks at your past and will bring you to a space where you can deal with the past. But where I come in is right at when you're finished your counseling, it's like, what's my next step? How do I start in this new phase of my life, this new beginning? Because the counseling is only going to bring you so far. You've dealt with your past. You're learning how to deal with your trauma. But then it's the next step. It's like, how do I start this new me? Yeah. How do I find my authentic self? So I would talk about like your values, your strengths, like what are you good at? Like what's your mojo? You know, who are you? Like, what is your authentic self? We narrow right down to who are you? What do you like? What brings you joy? And then build from there. Okay, you used to like exercise. Why aren't you not doing it? Let's look and see if we can incorporate it into our daily lives. then there's a little balance coming in. Okay, let's look at our mind. Can we bring a bit of meditation in? Start off 1 minute a day. Do it, bring it up, extend, bring it to 2, 3, 4 as the weeks go by. Suddenly you'll be like, I can't go anywhere without doing my meditation. You know what I mean? It's rewiring your brain. And it's sort of like, you know, it's really opening your mind to thinking, you know, all the external influence is just noise.
Yeah, exactly. I could listen to you all day. That's fascinating. I think we better go and wrap this up, Christine.
No problem. This is a long one. Sorry, when I start talking, that's it.
No, it's fine. I'll just edit out all the bits and I'll just leave me in the talking. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Sounds good.
No, honest to God, that was fascinating. Honestly, your story is amazing. I could listen to you all day, but yeah, we probably better go and end this fairly soon. Yeah. Do you want to tell people where they can get in contact with you?
Yeah, so my website is spiritualwellnessandcoaching.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. I do Reiki healing, yoga classes, and also then wellness coaching. And if you just need to find a little balance in your life, I am always all about balance. My yoga classes are both yin and yang. So it's strengthening the muscles, and then the yin is going inwards, real restorative, meditative yoga. So yeah, check me out.
Brilliant. Okay, brilliant. Thanks very much for coming on, Christine. Again, that was
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Guys, we're going to leave that there and we'll wrap things up. We'll be back very soon with another episode of the Endless Spiral podcast. So I'll see you all, and bye for now.